The speakers we have for this session. The first speaker I'll introduce is Jonathan Bauer. He is with the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, our DEP rep, here today. He is the solid waste supervisor for DEP. He has served as an intern with the department's storage tank program and watershed program from 98 to 99. He's also a solid waste specialist and also was the compliance specialist for the department's waste management program from 2005 to 2012. So, thank you, John, for being here. And John's also been engaged with our debris planning efforts in the city and also, I think, some of the other counties as well. So thank you for being here, John. The other person I want to introduce is Charles Raudenbush from Waste Management. Chuck has been mentioned several times with some of our participants here today. He's the man that apparently walks on water, so we appreciate having him there. He is a wealth of knowledge about waste management's operations and resources in the area. He has been with Waste Management since 1990, is responsible for drafting and design of various proposals relating to all levels of government and is the public sector liaison throughout this region. So he's here to bestow a lot of wisdom upon us today. And with us from Dewberry is Tim Berkhimer. Tim is going to be here to moderate this panel discussion to keep it lively. We appreciate Tim coming up here from Virginia. He has a bachelor's degree in civil engineering and is also a licensed professional engineer in the Commonwealth of Virginia. He worked with the city of Virginia Beach from 1981 to 2000. He's a leader for the development of the Virginia Beach Plan for Hurricane Response Preparedness. He's also been engaged in numerous disaster operations between 2000 to 2011, where he was involved in pretty much every disaster declaration across the country at that time. He's also authored many debris management contracts for debris removal and monitored grants management for 16 municipal and state government agencies in the Hampton Roads area. He's also one of the contributing authors to the FEMA Debris Bible that's been talked about, mentioned several times at FEMA 325. So we really appreciate having you here, Tim, as well. And thank you to the panel.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. To get this kicked off here, I think we got a great group here to talk about some disaster disposal challenges. Each of the presenters is going to give a few opening introductory remarks, and then what we're interested in doing is engaging in conversation and taking in as many of your questions or thoughts or whatever that you have. You can see we've got quite a wealth of knowledge up here from various aspects and various what I'll call prime movers in the disaster debris management industry. I got my start in local government, down on the public works side of the house, on the operations end, down at the yard. Hurricane was approaching Virginia Beach back in, I think it was 96. All we could think to do was to mount the snowplow blades on our trucks and fuel up the trucks, and oh, by the way, somebody thought there were two chainsaws out in the shed. And that was our level of preparedness at that point in time. And I hear the chuckles because it sounds like that's where I live, coming from you. But afterwards, I got tasked with putting together a program that basically found the Public Works Department, who was going to be the responsible agency in the city, found us ready for the disaster debris management challenge. And what that evolved into was pre-positioning and pre-planning. That's certainly the theme that you've heard from the several presenters we've had today. And to give you an idea on a little bit more in depth some of the resources that are available here to you locally, we've got John and Chuck here. And without further ado, I'll ask John if you'll go ahead and make some introductory remarks on behalf of DEP.
Yes, instead with the department's waste management program. Most of you know the department has many tiers, many programs involved. Relating to catastrophic events or disasters. Initially, we have an emergency response team. One of our members is here today. They might have some involvement during the initial storm. They more assess roles and go out and see what's needed. They don't provide any real contractual services. The contractor still needs to be brought in for that emergency situation. After the storms, from time to time, like after Floyd and I think maybe Irene, we were asked by FEMA or PEMA to help with the disaster assessments. I think kind of like those dashboard assessments, driving around and seeing what tanks have flipped over, what areas have a lot of debris, that type of coordination. Outside of that, storm-wise, we don't have too much responsibility or capabilities. What we do is we work with the industry, the private sector, and we try to open up their permit limitations for some amount of time. And that is done by them requesting us to alleviate things like their daily volumes, acceptance of vehicles without Act 90, operational hours, and the waiver of some applicable mandated fees. So if a disaster occurs or if there's an event in an area, the facility contacts us and asks for these permanent conditions to be alleviated or extended for some period of time. We also look at and can review different plans. Like if a community or a county decide to do site management plans, we would be acceptable to taking them and reviewing them, commenting on them, having meetings about setting them up. So I guess again, as the other people involved here are encouraging pre-planning, I think that's a lot of what we would be encouraging also. And we're always there for information and as a contact.
Okay. Thank you, John. Chuck, you want to give us a waste management?
Sure. I think you have to characterize your planning by making it resilient and flexible. I think if there are two call words when you sit down and do everything, it's rigidity. I think is a very, very dangerous thing. If you think you're going to have a plan, put it on a shelf like you do with anyone knows CEO Sewer Enforcement 537 plans. They can do one, they put it on the shelf, and then 10 years later they do another one, putting it on top of it. That's not going to serve the community or your residents well when it comes to debris management. There are over 250 distinct separate municipalities in the 5-county area. Forget about Philadelphia, that's 249 other municipalities in the 5-county area. And it's tough, they're very diverse from very affluent communities, very large communities, to very rural and impoverished communities. It's a tough group of people to get to cooperate on anything, and I think the department and the 5-county effort is going a long way to do that. Now the industry, as you can see quite evident from the map behind us, there is a number of solid waste and C&D type of recycling facilities located within these are ones located within a business drive of southeastern Pennsylvania. So the industry is poised to work with municipalities and with the departments. And certainly the hours, tonnage. One of the biggest things, and it's sort of an innocuous thing, but it was one, and I'm sure Barry experienced this, is that the 80,000-pound weight limits. We had to go work with the department and in turn work with PennDOT to get the 80,000-pound restriction on trucks and vehicles lifted, because you can, that's somehow an arbitrary number that someone came up with somewhere along the line, and you could put more weight into the trucks, but of course, as we were saying earlier, you've got, unfortunately, you got another claim to fame here in Pennsylvania is the United States worst roads, so we don't want to further damage those roads, but again, there's ways of getting to 90% of these facilities on roads that can handle 120,000 pounds. And again, it's not something you want to do on a regular basis, but our immediate neighbor to the north, New York, they allow 120,000 weight trucks to go all over their state regularity, and their roads are not appreciably better than ours. So again, these are the types of things, and it's that flexibility. You have to be flexible, you have to be able to work together, cooperate together, both the public, the private, and our objective is obviously to provide a service to the residents of your respective communities and our customers, and do it in a safe and environmental solid manner.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions at this point?
And by the way, I will tell Mayor Giralmo, you did a great job today.
John, one question for you. In terms of the debris planning, we're hearing that one of the key considerations is identification and evaluation of debris management sites or the temporary staging and reduction sites. What does DEP expect from a local government when they're requesting authorization to open a site?
In general, anytime anyone, local government, individual, wants to take waste, the debris, from a site where it's originally generated, where it's created, and taken to a secondary site, we want to know about it. We consider it something that needs a permit usually. Now there's different types of permits. The landfills, the transfer stations have individual permits that are very specific. They've been designed and operated by the permittee. Our next level of permits is our beneficial, or general permits. They're general permits for beneficial use. They usually entail some type of product coming out of the end use of this permit. After that, there's things like permit by rules. There's the one thing that is very interesting is a set of best management practices, or there's many sets of best management practices, but one that results or can relate to this situation is for land clearing, grubbing, and excavation plant material. And what, excuse me, why I lean into that is in this best management practices, there's a manual for that, and in that manual, there's a set of notification requirements. And I bring them up because if debris management sites would be considered, the person that's going to develop them needs to come up with sufficient notification systems. Notifying to the department that these are our plans, our intentions, this is the location, the size, and possible time frames. If they're developed, that notification system's developed or agreed to earlier, then when the disaster or event occurs, that notification goes smoothly. So we wouldn't be giving a site-specific or general permit to a debris management site, but we would have to discuss, or we would like to discuss, the notification process, which would also include a lot of the operational conditions at the site also. So in that pre-planning, and with a couple things here, we have really been moving in the direction of really trying to be public friendly. We offer meetings a lot. So if a group, a county, or a township starts to develop a debris management site plan, I think we would highly encourage contacting us and asking for, we would often call it a pre-application meeting, but it's not an actual application, a discussion, a meeting in our office to go over the specifics of what is being proposed before it's included or finalized.
What can you tell us about the testing of soils and groundwaters before a site might be approved for use?
There's all kinds of different levels of environmental assessment. So it's going to be what that permittee and what that landowner, the person who's going to take the responsibility, is going to be comfortable with. Most people here have probably heard of phase 1 and phase 2 audits. There'd be some due diligence on the person proposing it. I think there's more concern about, again, the history of the site, the ownership of the site, and then the end use or the returning to the proper use of the site. I don't think there'd be a lot of pre-sampling at many sites before making it a debris management site, a temporary debris management site. A lot of that's going to be historical information that you probably do through a record review or property search.
It's been my experience that sites where if all you're doing is reducing the vegetative debris through a tub grinder, you don't have a lot of greases and oils and fuels there, except the hydraulic systems on your dump trucks and your loaders and your excavators, that kind of thing. That certainly needs to be protected against and planned for. And what we've seen in other jurisdictions across the nation is that if and when you hire a contractor to, one, assist with the debris removal and or to operate the debris management site and bring in the tub grinders or the air curtain incinerators like you saw, that the testing of the soils and the groundwaters generally occurs when that contractor takes occupancy of the site. To do testing today for someday in the future that you have no idea what the schedule is, you have to realize that those tests actually have life cycles. And they also are providing, as you indicated, that snapshot in time of the baseline conditions that you as the jurisdiction will hold the contractor to during the closure and the remediation of the site. That's a pretty big issue.
That thought just came to mind, sort of related, but the legislature here in the Commonwealth, much to their credit, decided to pass a piece of legislation called the Controlled Device Act, which is typical legislative ease. No one understands what that meant. But what that meant was, as of January 1st of 13, televisions, computers, and electronic equipment of that type could no longer go into a waste energy plant or a landfill, which we don't want them in there. They've got things that don't belong in there. Unfortunately, as the pictures that Barry showed, it's tough to pull out various things out of a pile of debris like that. So again, that's just gets back to what I said. It's a law, but there's the flexibility has to be there that the department and much to their credit and their inspectors say, look, this is insanity if you expect someone to pick a computer monitor or a cell phone out or a television out of a crunch pile of C and D. So again, that's the type of things I'm talking about. Again, your planning and your operations and everything has to have a high degree of flexibility because, I defy anyone to show me a plan that's worked from day one exactly like it was planned to without any glitches. It just doesn't happen. So you need to have the ability to be flexible, to be nimble, to adapt and change the circumstances as they're dictated. For instance, we had the ice storm. In the early part of this year, everyone knows. I had 6 days without power, so everyone knows what happened. But interestingly enough, in that ice storm, they didn't have a lot of spoiled food because most of the people put their food outside because it was in the 20s. So they didn't lose food like they do in a summer storm where you had all that spoiled food being thrown out at the curb. So again, it's just little anomalies, but a weather-related impact on the type of waste people put out during an emergency.
Well, that's a good point. As Barry pointed out in his presentation this morning, the value is not in the plan, it's in going through the planning process and bringing that team together to discuss a plan that's going to fit the flood, the ice storm, and the hurricane, and how do we go about being ready for that. DEP is leaning forward to assist the local jurisdictions, and I think that goes a long way, knowing that you're not butting heads with the Department of Environmental Protection. Oftentimes when we think about dealing with DEP, we think of it as a almost a contentious effort, and that's not the case here. Chuck, would you tell us what can the local governments and the citizenry in this area expect from waste management? What is your plan over and above the normal trash collection that can assist in the debris process?
Sure. Well, not just the company waste, but the industry, I think, can handle almost any situations that are thrown at them regarding a storm. The question is, and Ben Selm had the foresight to, talk to Waste Management. I think any municipality can talk to their or they have their own public works department and have the ability to basically have a number of either roll-offs or something that you allocated with, not contractual in the sense of paid for, but in case there's a storm, that X municipality gets 10 roll-offs before Y municipality. That way, again, you have that fortitude because there's not a lot of, the waste industry does not have a lot of spare trucks, and when business is doing well, and it's doing much better than it was a few years ago, there's not a lot of roll-offs sitting around. They're all allocated to construction jobs or permanent jobs. So it's important for the public works or the borough or the township managers to go out and say, look, that in the eventuality of a storm, can Easttown Township be guaranteed 10 roll-offs? That way, as the public works director in Easttown Township, that you have the ability that there's a storm, you can have it. Not starting to call, A sanitation through Z sanitation, because everybody's going to go, geez, I'm sorry, ours are all gone. So that, again, that's that planning process of, not contractual, but planning to have the ability to call someone or a company, if you don't have a someone, to say, remember we have allocated X number and I need to call that marker in and get those roll-offs delivered here or whatever. And the industry also has the ability, we've had some very severe flooding along the Delaware, not hurricane related and ice storm to block up the water, but have the ability to actually, those large piles of the material that Barry had out in front of all the houses over on the shore, we had similar piles along the houses along the Delaware. We would send basically a rear load trash truck, and the public works director would have his people or temp workers just loading stuff riding down the street. And again, that's something you should think about ahead of time, because it's like you got your little car insurance card from Allstate or State Farm, you throw it in your glove box and forget about it till you get the next one. But this is something you want, that insurance certificate analogous to having some sort of allotment of equipment needed for your emergency when it happens.
One thing like that, a bit of perspective, we have to realize that when an catastrophe or disaster happens in this area or the surrounding area, we're really more the center of the waste area. So Sandy, New Jersey, New York, a lot of that waste, when there's a storm, it's funneling down into Bristol, the Pellytown area.
By the way, and there's stuff out in Manaloki. To this day, there's still waste from those shore communities coming into southeastern Pennsylvania for disposal.
So when an event occurs, it's not like you're just allocating resources to the communities around here. Your landfills and the other disposal facilities around here really service a tri-state or larger area.
Well, every county in Pennsylvania is responsible for having a solid waste management plan. Same is true in New Jersey and New York State, and a lot of the bordering counties have Pennsylvania facilities in their respective state plans in New York and New Jersey.
It's a good point. A couple of things to keep in mind when you're looking at whether it's an agency like DEP, whether it's your own public works department, whether it's a regional waste hauler like Waste Management, that as an entity, as a municipal government, state government, private enterprise, we are collectively designed for the blue sky day. Our budgets are set up for the blue sky day, the numbers of pieces of equipment we have, the crew sizes, all of that are designed for the blue sky day. And the day the sky turns black, you can throw all that stuff out the window because it really doesn't come into play anymore. But an advantage is that looking at the agencies that you're being introduced to here at this conference, you're not just seeing individuals or single companies here. You're looking at, for instance, with Chuck, Waste Management, he's got a reach back potential that is incredible. And while all of his roll-off boxes from the immediate area might be spoken for, he can call the next regional area and get in additional assistance.
Well, you mentioned that. We service the whole Jersey Shore. We brought in crews and trucks from Ohio and Michigan. Like the power companies, right. Although it's similar because that's a different power company. But because we're nationwide, we have the ability to, in fact, mobilize out of state.
Well, and my experience over in the southern region of New Jersey last summer, or in the state of New Jersey actually, there was one local contractor from New Jersey of the three that were hired. The other two contractors came up out of the Gulf region where they have the experience and the network. The call goes out to the contractor, a name of a firm, and then that brings to you all of the resources that they have. And I think that's very important to keep in mind. One of the challenges would be, I think it's the Act 90 regulation and registration of every vehicle. What's the position on that?
Well, I'm sure a lot of you heard of Act 90, the Waste Transportation Safety Act, where you have to register every truck and trailer, and they have a certification sticker on them. And what that really refers to, and some people aren't clear about that, that is not a requirement to transport waste in the state. That's a requirement of every permitted facility to have that sticker to accept that truck. So if you want to go to any of the permitted facilities in Pennsylvania, you have to have that sticker. That is one of the permit alleviations or responses we can grant during a storm, that they're allowed to accept material on trucks that aren't Act 90. So then all of a sudden all your municipal triaxles, things that usually haul stone, other things like that, can be used. Now, the caveat for that and many of the other things with the permit exemptions is it's supposed to be for flood or, debris from the catastrophic event. So normal trash, they're not supposed to accept normal trash without the stickers or outside of their hours or with increased weights. That's not flood debris or catastrophic event debris, disaster debris. But those, they can be alleviated, you know. And then there's supposed to be a time frame. They're supposed to give us a start date and an end date. And then it can be extended. It's often extended by the governor or a mayor if the problem persists or seems larger than they initially thought.
Well, we had it predated Act 90, but I guess it was 96 or when we had the 4 foot of snow, the department, and I mean, most municipalities, the large size, particularly the city of Philadelphia, uses their refuse trucks to plow snow. Well, when they're plowing snow, they're not picking up trash, and every day is another day of trash that builds up. The department, the city of Philadelphia, and Waste Management and other companies were able to have literally the landfills open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because you were so far in the rear with trash that, you know, Philadelphia puts out about almost 4,000 tons of municipal waste every day of the week they generate. So you start to lose those 4,000 tons. There's a lot of 4,000 you have to pick up. But again, it's a cooperative effort between the regulator, the regulator, and the customer, for lack of a better term, where they all work to achieve, you know, a quick turnaround to solve an imminent problem.
Speaking of the quick turnaround, what, if any, plans does Waste Management have at the landfills you operate to accommodate the additional input of numbers of vehicles? Again, designed for the blue sky day, the day the sky turns black, the number of vehicles or truckloads of debris going into the landfill is going to increase exponentially.
Yeah, well, you're right. It's always a concern. Although it's, I alluded to the fact that the economy is better today than it was a few years ago, it's still not as good as it was 10 years ago. So there is capacity available at all of these disposal facilities, and capacity available equates to ability to bring in more trucks. So right now, it's a sort of a buyer's market. If there's, God forbid, there's a disaster, trucks will not be a major impact at most of these facilities. Now, obviously, if you're going to, you know, downtown Norristown or Philadelphia, or there's a question of traffic, which is there 7 days a week, doesn't regard some trash. But again, it's not a big concern right now.
Does, and you're just speaking for Waste Management, do you have land area, acreage available at some of these sites for a municipality or yourself to set up a processing site, like a vegetative reduction site, or?
Well, we do already have it in existence.
Okay.
In Southeastern Pennsylvania, and so do other companies. There are a number of permitted yard waste processing facilities, NC and D. And we've talked to the city of Philadelphia, a lot of municipalities, you know, big shopping mall is a perfect place to stage C and D. You know, any place that, like a sports, you know, like where the Phillies or Eagles play during the winter, you know, something off season, something to do that. So there's a lot of places, and I think that's what the sort of the 5-county committee study these types of facilities. Where are they? You know, having a beautiful facility that's serviced by a 1-lane road is, you know, it's not a beautiful facility because you can't get to it. Right. So there's the questions of ingress and egress. There's the questions of, you know, and think about it, if you're going to have a flood and your staging area is along the river, then you might have a better place to put your staging area, because that staging area probably will be flooded out. So again, you should have, you know, sort of a A, B, C, and D staging areas, you know, difference because of, you know, it impacts upon things with traffic, with weather, with multitude of things.
One of the very interesting aspects of the waterway debris removal job in New Jersey after Sandy was the impact of the threatened and endangered species. Something that you don't I haven't encountered it before on land-based debris operations, but what we realized very early on was that all the birds that fly south for the wintertime like to stop in this area, southern New Jersey, southeastern Pennsylvania, on their way back north in the springtime. And what that ultimately meant was, because of the buffer and the time restrictions required around nests and rookeries and all kinds of things, that it severely impacted the contractor's ability to go in and do the debris removal work. But again, we were able to work with DEP, and they were leaning forward tremendously on that. And I would make an educated guess that there's some impact from threatened endangered species here in southeastern Pennsylvania. The other issue that surfaced over there was historic properties, and Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. One of the contractors pulled up the bow of a wooden ship, and gosh, that set off all kinds of alarms and got several other different state agencies involved there. I would suspect that with the history that exists in this part of Pennsylvania, that's going to be a huge concern as well. So I guess a point I'll make is, for anybody that's looking at a debris management site, don't forget the Historic Preservation Act in coordination with the State Historic Preservation Officer. Ultimately, that is one of the questions in the special consideration sheet that gets attached to the project worksheet that you will submit to FEMA for reimbursement of your funds. So they're going to come asking for that, but that's something that if you're not ready for it, can really bite you pretty hard there. So
I would agree with that, and my program manager says this all the time with our permittees. Says location, location, location. Where you pick potential debris management site, a temporary one, it's a lot about location with historical parks, bike paths, roadways, or schools, playgrounds. There's a lot of setback requirements and limitations in our regs, and there's a lot of places we wouldn't suggest or allow the use for debris management site because of the surrounding area, the rules surrounding.
So again, there's another huge plug for the early coordination and that pre-application meeting.
Yeah, 10 minutes from here is Valley Forge State Park. I mean, there's all types of, historically significant, going back pre-revolutionary times through the day. I mean, everywhere is, there's a brass plaque out in front of almost every house here in southeastern Pennsylvania. It's been around for a long time. Someone slept there or died there.
Yes, sir.
And the Pennsylvania Historical Museum Commission has a really good map, a GIS map, that locates all of those historical areas in the state of Pennsylvania. So if someone is doing that planning and they're not sure what was designated as a historical property, that's easy enough to get. You can just you can get that from the state. We would provide that for you.
Very good. Very good. Does anybody else have any other questions? John, back to you. What are some of the best practices or recommendations you might share with this audience, or key considerations that they might take into have in their forefront of their minds regarding an overall disaster debris program?
Preparations is a big thing. The venue to present the information has come up. I know some people are talking about doing their county-wide solid waste management plans. I think a county or two is talking about trying to incorporate a debris management plan within that plan. I think our stance is that it's not officially part of that plan, it's not required in that plan, but we'd be willing to review proposals from within that plan. So that might be a suggestion countywide. We mentioned earlier, John's speaker before, about getting the woody waste out of this debris management is a good goal. And I kind of agree with that, and that's in our regulations allow for that, for without a permit, with just a notification and establish best management practices. People can operate, or municipalities can operate these land clearing and rubbing sites. So again, suggest going back and looking at the best management practices for LCGE material, and more specifically the notification process in there can help give a guidelines for the best way to prepare material for us to review and present. Another note, and I thought I had the reg in here. Again, we're multiple programs on the waste management program. Air curtains have been mentioned a time or two. I don't think you're going to have anywhere in the 5-county area where we're going to allow open burns. It's an urban area, it's an air curtain, or it's a air retention basin, I think it's called. So they're usually, there's some exemptions for like burning of family material, but within this air basin, until you get out to more rural areas, that's usually not the suggested method of getting rid of debris management or debris material. That and coordinating with the private facilities is going to give you the best insurance plans for, as Chuck said, getting containers, knowing where the tonnage is available, things like that.
Yeah, I would suggest that the public works people here, take back today, and not get too preachy, but the sermon you heard from everybody, and today and tomorrow, which is not over yet, but take back to your borough or township manager, or if you're from a smaller municipality, you're a roadmaster, you can make the decisions yourself. These are the type of things, again, it's, you change your oil in your car, 3,000 miles, yes. Is it needed? No. Can it go 4? Can it go 5? Eventually, it's going to start to destroy it, and that's again this planning. You can just put something in. It doesn't have to be voluminous. It doesn't have to, and I apologize for the consultants amongst this. It doesn't have to be drawn by a consultant. It can be something very simple that I call, this company when it rains and there's going to be a storm. And as simple as that, you have a contact, you have what you're going to need and what to order, and it's all done. You already have your established line of credit. Instead of having to worry about purchase orders and all that stuff, it's just easier to pre-plan this. And there's going to be so many things that you're going to have to do in time of a storm, from cutting down trees that block right-of-ways, to directing traffic, to flooding, to pumping. Just take the small part, get it done, and put it there, and forget about it till you need it.
One other element that I'll make a pitch for here, and I know we're not here to talk about reimbursement from FEMA. We're here to talk about the actual debris management challenge. But in my mind, you can't talk one without the other. The FEMA rules and regulations are voluminous. As John Buri mentioned this morning, the target keeps moving. There was a FEMA recovery policy issued the day before Winter Storm Pat. And unless, it's kind of like the IRS. The guy knocks on the door, and I'm from the federal government, I'm here to help. But if you're not well versed in the FEMA rules, regulations, policies, and procedures, it's worth your effort to team up with somebody who is. Because in a disaster situation, it doesn't matter whether it's an ice storm, a flood, a hurricane, a tornado, a wildfire, what have you. As the local government, you've got two great challenges in front of you. And the first is the debris. It's what's visible to your constituents, those people that are paying your salary, the citizens of the community. That actually turns out to be the shorter term challenge, because while it'll seem like it overwhelms you for a period of between 90 and 180 days, that actually becomes a short period of time when you talk about the second great challenge. And that second challenge is getting just as much money back as the cleanup is costing you from the federal government after a presidential disaster declaration. And that is the impact that can not only affect your current annual operating budget, it can impact future operating budgets, it can impact reserves for contingencies that have impacts on the bond rating that the jurisdiction is able to maintain, and it can affect future annual operating budgets. But it's the one that most citizens don't see. They just want the debris cleaned up. Well, I'll offer the caution that You need to have the reimbursement of those costs. You need to have your debris management plan designed in accordance with the rules for reimbursement. John did make mention this morning that of the Office of the Inspector General. When you receive, your city or county receives a grant from FEMA, the Office of the Inspector General will come back 3, 5, 8, 10 years later to audit the whole process. When FEMA comes into town and the area is still a disaster area, they're anxious to pump the money back into the local economy and make the reimbursement to the local government. And that's done sometimes with a little looser view than the Inspector General is going to have. He's coming in, he or she's coming in wanting to make sure all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted, that you had the right language in your contract advertisement, that the whole process was done in accordance with the reimbursement program. But again, we're not focusing on that here today, just the debris program. I just wanted to throw that thought out there for you for my particular background.
And remember, it's FEMA money, but it's still our money. It's not like this is magic pot of money down in Washington. It's all spending the tax dollars that we all pay every year. So it's not like, wow, I'm going to get this money. And, you know, it's all our money, but it's certainly deserving to get your fair share back when it comes time of a disaster. And you know, sometimes you need to get your congressman or your senator involved if it's a federal issue, or your legislator or state senator regarding a state issue. And you know, you're all, you know, either commissioners or supervisors or borough council. They're all ingrained in the political workings of the system too. So they all can help when it comes time to shaking the trees.
Very good. Does anybody have any questions at this point? Okay, I don't see.
You just walk
Matt,
by that doorway.
Okay. Well, if nobody has any questions at this point, we've pretty much exhausted our presentation here. Let's see. What was next on the agenda? Why don't we? I'm going to make an executive decision here and say, why don't we take a break and come back at 2 o'clock? All right? Thank you.